Warren County in North Carolina was affected by the illegal dumping of PCB on roadsides in 1973. Warren County was not the only county within North Carolina that was affected, as there were 13 other surrounding counties that were affected. But the state of North Carolina decided to place a landfill in Afton, which is located inside Warren County, to help put all this contaminated soil in order to detoxify it and clean it. But after 3 lawsuits and a few public hearings, they were unsuccessful, and so they were unsuccessful in stopping the landfill. So many of the residents decided to gather and to rally and to protest. And what they did was that they marched and they laid in the middle of the road that was going to go to the landfill. And they did this to obviously prevent it. And while this was able to stop the trucks and all that from going to the landfill, overall they were unsuccessful, as the landfill was still created and the soil was still dumped. Eventually they were able to detoxify the landfill, so it's not harmful as it once was. And is this an environmental justice issue? It is, because it deals with the EPA and their regulations. It involved pollution and the depletion of natural sources and natural resources. The dumping that occurred, it essentially violated the EPA's standards of disposal, and because this chemical has some toxicity to it, it is harmful to the surrounding environment. For instance, the chemical can cause disturbances in our blood, liver, reproductive system, and nervous system.
Group 6 chose the PCB dumping in Warren County, North Carolina study case because this incident sparked the beginnings of the environmental justice movement and environmental racism. The citizens were playing an increasingly active role in driving change around environmental justice at a national level. Environmental justice is concerned with fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people, regardless of race, color, national origin, or income, in the context of development, implementation, and enforcement of environmental laws, regulations, and policy. The case of the PCB dumping in Warren County, North Carolina in 1982 was considered by many to be a case of environmental justice and environmental racism, as decisions were made without due consideration of the local citizens who were not valued by those officials. We also chose this case because there were enough different entities involved for the analysis of perspective, including the citizens of Warren County, the state of North Carolina, the EPA, the Superfund site, and the Rarick-based World Transformer Company.
Hello, I'm Justin McAdams, and I'm here to present the business and industrial perspective in the case study PCB dumping in Warren County. This case started off with the government regulating these businesses to phase out the usage of PCB. PCB is a chemical that used in capacitors and transformers. Those are some examples of things that PCBs are used in. basically the government said we're going to phase out this toxic chemical PCB, which has been used for years in 1979. So we've already had 300,000 tons of this dumped in the landfills, and now we're labeling this chemical, which it is really toxic, as we don't need it. We don't need to be, our environment, we don't be using this. So this prompted businesses there was a lack of ways of disposing of this, so this really caused a lot of problems, because there was not a way to dispose it, which will come later, and burning PCBs, which basically there was a lack of disposing, and we had to prompt to change chemicals to be used in our products. So this prompted, you would think businesses do everything legal, but this led to illegal dumping on the roads, 270 miles of roads. So now the EPA has to clean this 270 miles of roads and prompted them to have to build a landfill to clean this up. So basically, that was some of the role in business and industrial sector. Thank you.
The state had a responsibility to promote and protect the public health, but also get rid of these materials responsibly. At first, their perspective in this situation was denial. The location of the landfill was in a small rural town in Warren County. Alejandra Perez in the Environmental Justice Atlas, and she notes that this town was without city council and without a mayor. Also, she notes that the population was 75% African American. Now, these materials can be very dangerous if not handled responsibly, but also could be at risk to the environment. And the local members of the community began to protest against the location of this landfill, and saying that these materials and the landfill also made the price of their property and the value of the property go down, but also the soil in the landfill is a risk to the environment. Jim Hunt, the state governor, denied that the location of the landfill was environmental justice and that the location was based on scientific and economic factors. Also, that the soil in the landfill was not an environmental risk. However, as protests began to grow, the government's position changed as protests got stronger and stronger. The state government eventually created a commission to study the commission's report, acknowledged that the PCB landfill was a case of environmental injustice. The federal government's involvement in the issue changed the perspective of the state government. At first, the Environmental Protection Agency said they did not want to get involved in the issue as it was a state matter. But once the federal government acknowledged that the landfill site was a Superfund site, which allowed for federal funding and resources to be used to clean up for the site, the state government was pretty much forced to or had to clean up the site. Overall, the state's perspective started from denial and resisting the environmental justices of the local community members to taking action and acknowledging their environmental justices, but also promoting policies that we need to protect environmental justice.
The city of Afton did not have a strong government, so the residents of Warren County and of Afton had to rely on the county officials for advocating for their rights and for expressing what the citizens want. They believe that the landfill should not be placed there, as the original dumping across the roads, it did not affect Warren County as much as it did the other 13 counties. This perspective was in conflict with the state government, as they wanted to create a landfill in Afton because it would be relatively cheap. Additionally, the county officials, they thought that they were being targeted because of their race, essentially. This perspective essentially wanted the best for their citizens and their local government, and having a landfill placed there, it wasn't the best because of all the toxic chemicals and the pollution that it contributed to.
For the citizens' perspective, people's lives were at stake. Without a fair treatment of environmental justice, many people were made to be victims of the plans and ambitions of others. The citizens of Warren County in North Carolina were devastated with the state North Carolina and the EPA to approve the storage site of contaminated soil in their community. They joined together in protests, marches, and other forms of civil disobedience to bring attention to environmental justice issues and call for change. This is examples of environmental racism, whereby communities of color are disproportionately burdened with health hazards through policy and practices that force them to live in proximity to source of toxic waste landfill. Indigenous population often suffer from environmental racism. As a result, these communities suffer greater rates of health problems due to discharges produced by polluting industrial activities installed in their communities. The PBC had become a serious threat to the citizens' health and soil condition in their community.
Hello. In conclusion to our case study, environmental problems are difficult to solve because people do not want to solve them. There is one root cause to why social and environmental problems are so difficult to solve, because due to their greed and the selfishness. Environmental problems can be complex and hard to resolve. Complexity arises because the components of the environment are linked, and their interactions may be separated by both time and distance. The big businesses always make money by pillaging the environment, and they have control of the U.S. government. First, understand which environment you are dealing with. Go into the philosophy behind it, study the issue, and learn about them. Seeing what you can learn from the indigenous people in your locality, educating people, and participating in awareness programs. So this is the conclusion to our project. Thank you.